Clubhouse.
Tempedo's got an operation down in Mexico that steals and smuggles cattle in illegally. Forges all the paperwork for border patrol and cattle brokers. Place is so mismanaged. It's the only way they've kept the lights on. Kept living in luxury. In hell. It's the only way they've been able to afford a goddamn thing. The whole Jackson family's crooked, top to bottom. They ain't ranchers. Those motherfuckers are thieves. Putting every ranch in South Texas at risk.
That would explain Bullet. Foot and mouth.
When's the next load?
2 days.
Welcome to Pod Clubhouse's coverage of Dutton Ranch, the newest entry in the Yellowstone universe of shows. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Tonight we're discussing Episode 8, Dutton Ranch, the penultimate episode of Season 1, Whiskey Limits. Tonight's episode was written by Hilary Bettis and J. Todd Scott, both of whom have previously written episodes this season. Tonight's episode was once again directed by Phil Abraham, who directed Episode 7.
Just a community note, please join us on Facebook in the Yellowstone 1923-1883, the Madison and Dutton Ranch discussion and news group. It's getting to be super long to discuss Dutton Ranch and the whole universe of Taylor Sheridan and Yellowstone shows. We assume you've watched this episode, you guys. This is not a recap show. We're not going to go step by step throughout the episode, but we will definitely spoil it for you. So if you have not watched, please put us on pause, go watch, and then come on back.
Longtime listeners of you and me and Pod Clubhouse podcast know that this guy loves a penultimate episode. It is oftentimes...
Do you love that episode or do you love the word?
Both.
What is it? What is it?
Both. I mean, the word is maybe my favorite word in English to say. I do love penultimate. But no, I love the second to last episodes of seasons because oftentimes when it's done well, that's the episode that really sets the table for the finale. Done well, it'll leave you on the edge of your seat. It's going to leave you really panting for the finale more than any other episode. The cliffhanger of a penultimate episode, maybe except for a good, like, Who Shot JR in the Shower finale kind of episode, you know, just for all the old heads listening. You know, like, but the penultimate episode usually has a really good cliffhanger. It's the one that usually is like, all right, all the players are in place so that we can just get into the finale and stuff is happening. All that moving around and stuff usually will happen in a penultimate episode. So that makes me ask you, Caroline, what did you think of this episode as a penultimate episode for presumably what is the first of many seasons of Dutton Ranch?
So I felt like this one kind of took a little bit of the wind out of the sails of episode 7 because I felt like there was more setup and more excitement and everything going on there than this one per se. Like this one sort of watered it down. It took all the things that we thought the tension was going to build even further in this one, and a lot of the things that could have exploded actually kind of fizzled out. Beulah's health issue was dealt with. Carter's entire situation didn't turn out to implode all the relationships between the Dutton Ranch and the 10 Petal. So for me, I was sort of like, okay, it sort of tempered the previous episode instead of raising the stakes, which was kind of unexpected for me.
I think for me, other than Joaquin's final scene call to his father asking him for his help, I think that's the only thing they've really set up for next week. Finale-wise, I think Austin's reveal to Beth and Rip and Zachariah's there about 10 Petal having the illegal stealing and smuggling operation in Mexico, which confirms what they haven't introduced drugs, but at least the illegal smuggling of animals is something I think you and I have been on since we heard that Mariano call, if not before then. And presumably Mariano is the head of the spear on that side of the business. But that feels like something more than just one episode to resolve.
Right, that seems like season 2.
That seems like a season 2 plot to really unravel. Now, granted, that Rip says the very final thing in the scene is he says the next load of cattle is in 2 days. So presumably we'll see the next load of cattle coming in the finale. But I don't hear a plan here. I don't, for it all to come to a plan for them to take advantage of it, to do all the things you'd think they'd want to do to take down this illegal operation. That feels like something more than they would be able to put together in one episode. And I don't want them to rush it. That's an exciting storyline. I look at my notes. I was like, maybe that's a U.S. Marshals Casey Dutton thing gets involved, because I know fans are clamoring for him to come over to this show since Marshals had kind of a lukewarm season 1, though did get better at the end. So there's a lot of potential. I mean, you're going to involve DEA maybe or the Border Patrol. Like there's a whole thing you can spin out of them plotting how to use this information Austin has dropped here to take them down. So that doesn't feel like something that will be resolved in the finale. And I think I would be sad if it was, because it probably means it was rushed. Let that be a season 2 thing, which is great table setting, but who knows when season 2 is going to come. Like I'm thinking about episode 9, I want to be ready for the finale. So you raised the issue. I think another thing of this episode is you and I talked a lot in episode 7. Man, there are going to be consequences. There's going to be consequences for Carter with Oriana and not being able to work at 10 Pedal. How could he show up the next day? Consequences for Beth and Rip. How do they show their faces with the embarrassment of all that? To say nothing of, it wasn't a stroke. It turned out to be a heart attack. But is Beulah going to be able to even live, let alone resume work or whatever? No consequences. Other than a really bad hangover, the horse that he puked on, that Carter pukes on, had the most consequences in this episode, and I felt very bad for that horse.
I agree. I was honestly surprised by how neatly so many things just sort of wrapped up.
Beulah didn't give a shit at all. She was the one, but Beth went there to apologize, and she was like, hell-raising boys. Like, she was the one who was coolest about it. What?
Very boys will be boys. Now, some of it, okay, so we're at a stage right now in our own lives where we still have young adults, and Beulah is past us, right? She's in her late 60s, 70s. She's in a place where she can have some perspective. So maybe for her, she can end up with a boys can be boys, boys will be boys kind of attitude or something at some point. But I felt like it was warranted to be more angry for everyone across the board, for Beth and Rip, and for not controlling their son, and for everything going on with their prized Longhorns and everything. Like, I don't know, it felt too simplistic, like a shoulder shrug for an entire episode's worth of like insanity. You just kind of got like a shoulder shrug, like, what are you gonna do?
Especially with the Longhorns aspect of it, because the show had spent time showing us how Beulah viewed those horns as a symbol, as a physical manifestation and symbol of her ranch, of her family's ranch and legacy. Now, she does say to Everett, like, I don't give a shit if he does for it, and talking about Rob Will, like, maybe I don't care if he runs the ranch to the ground because I'm tired. I'm so fucking tired. I just want to get on with the getting on. Right. So maybe part of her perspective is less about what Carter did or didn't do. Maybe it's really her being over this, because I think no less than 3 separate conversations in this episode, to say nothing of the conversations of people coming up to her before she had her heart attack in episode 7. The only thing on people's lips are, why, Rob Will? What are you doing? So maybe she's maybe she is sick and tired of all of the questions at this particular moment. And she's happy that those horns are broken, because remember the last conversation she has with Rob Will, when he's kind of essentially telling her, you better change your succession plan or I'm going to kill Joaquin, is, I'm like your father. I'm exactly who you made me. I'm the spitting image of your father. I hated my father. That conversation may be playing in her ears of, I have let this monster out of Pandora's box kind of thing, and I'm just too tired to try and fight back against it.
Yeah, and it did make me wonder a little bit. Like, I had to check my own self and my own temper for a minute, because if I'm finding myself to be having the same reaction as Rob Will, and the only one who's having the same reaction as us is Rob Will, in terms of he's like, Beth and Rip are out and I'm so pissed and blah, blah, blah. And we're in his camp in our reaction to everything, then it did make me take a couple steps back and be like, maybe we are taking Carter's actions too harshly, and maybe we aren't having enough perspective. Maybe the show itself is showing more maturity in their kids do things, and they're not going to respect things in the way that a whole legacy of people have respected it. But it was making me feel funny that we were aligned with Rob Will's reaction. Because he was the only one who wanted consequences in the same way we did.
Well, but I don't think
No, but that's true. No, really, listen. He's the only one.
I don't think he wanted consequences because of what Carter did. I think he wants them fired because he doesn't want any competition running the ranch.
The why doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that the concept of calling for consequences is only being done by one guy in the whole show. And that makes me be like, oh shit. Like, are we misreading the situation that hardcore that no other character in the show agrees with us?
I feel like my expectation that there were consequences solely stemmed from how much the show seemed to be telling us those horns represented. And I wasn't making it up. I feel like we're taking that information in.
Either.
So maybe
so
that's what I'm saying.
Were we hoodwinked, or were we lured into feeling a certain way, and then the rest of the characters in the show didn't actually feel that way?
Well, let me posit this. Perhaps if not for the heart attack interceding, maybe Beulah would care a lot more. Maybe
that's true.
Without Rob Will showing up and Joaquin was going to be named successor and things would have gone the way she had planned them to go at the beginning of that evening, then the horns being shattered is by far the worst thing that happens. Maybe she cares a lot more. In the theme of things, that is maybe only the third worst thing that ended up happening that night, besides Rob Will's reappearance and her heart attack. So in you know what I mean? So it's the perspective of the situation changed. Maybe we just didn't account enough for how impactful those worst two things were over, the horns being shattered.
And I'll even throw out the idea that Everett's change of heart or Everett's willingness to take action also superseded a whole bunch of other things that happened. And while we had that somewhat on our radar screen that, will they, won't they get back together kind of thing, we didn't really know how much that changed her mood, how much that changed her, ability to be like, who cares what happens to the ranch, was even more than I expected.
Caroline, tell us about Far Empty, the book, because you picked up on its significance before I did when we were watching. I know you had pulled up a little summary there. Could you just read it a little bit? Because I think this episode was surprisingly a very Carter-heavy episode. I would say if you were going to name a character this episode was about, I would say this was a Carter episode. And there's a good connection there, I think, between the Far Empty book and Carter.
Well, it's you guys can look it up yourselves. It's by J. Todd Scott, and it's his debut crime novel. It's a gritty modern Western set in the stark Texas borderlands, focusing on a small town's dark secrets after a skeleton is unearthed. But here's the part that kind of caught my eye. The story follows a 17-year-old. Not exactly what I was hoping the Dutton Ranch was wanting to do. The story follows a 17-year-old Caleb Ross searching for his missing mother and new deputy Chris Cherry as their investigation points to Caleb's father, the powerful Sheriff Ross. The book is known for its dark and violent tone and exploring themes of loss and heroism, redemption through the eyes of characters deeply connected to the region. All of that stuff was like, we've got characters that match that. We've got an area that matches that. And I don't know how I felt about that because what I didn't hear is, and Caleb Ross's cool, chaotic, adoptive parents who should be a big part of the show. And that's what I want Dutton Ranch to talk about. So I'm hoping they're not using the Far Empty as their guide and this is a Carter-led show. But at least this episode felt that way.
If I knew better, this episode you could actually really take as a backdoor pilot for a Carter going off on his own kind of thing where he lives at Dwight's house now and he picks up a Dwight mantle, because I think that's actually what we're going to see. I mean, I have in my notes here, question at the end of this episode, is he now going to be living at Dwight's for the time being since he seemingly left with Beth's permission? She said, go, just remember this is always your home at the end of the episode. But he goes to Dwight's house and seems like he's going to just be there now for a while. So that is not the show I'm looking to watch. But the interesting thing is Far Empty was written by J. Todd Scott, who is one of the co-writers of this episode, and he had actually already wrote the Act of God Business, episode 3 of the show. So funny.
Tie-ins galore.
Tie-ins galore.
Well, he cares a lot about the teenage boy storyline, which makes sense then. Because,
I think he worked with the DEA also, and I think he was before becoming a writer and for television and for books, I think he was a DEA officer and maybe did a lot of border stuff. So he does seem uniquely qualified to be writing topics we're going to be covering in the show, but I, like you, hope I'm
looking for the Beth and Rip characters.
Right.
Like, where are they in your story?
Where are the middle-aged adults far empty?
Where are all the adults, right? Excuse me, where are the grown-ups?
Yeah, exactly. Just one more little quick preliminary before we actually get into the episode, and we're going to be talking a lot about Carter because it was the majority of his episode. We learn from Sheriff Handy, which, guys, if you're listening, I know his name is Wade, but his first name is Handy, or he's at least credited as Sheriff Handy Wade, and I think Sheriff Handy is a much funnier name than Sheriff Wade. Sheriff Handy tells...
Do you think it's supposed to be a play on Andy, like Andy Taylor, like Andy Griffith's show?
I don't know. I feel like it's just like a small town kind of name. It's probably like short for like Henderson.
Henderson? Sure. Sure.
Henderson?
Sure,
I could hear his mom calling him in for dinner. Henderson. Anyway, we learned that Xena, the African leopard, was taken to Texas Safari Park. Y'all, you can go to the Texas Safari Park. It is a real place. It is open daily, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. It is a fantastic drive-through safari adventure. You can find out more information at texassafaripark.com. We are not sponsored by them, but I thought it was a hoot and a half that it's a real place that you can go. I don't see African leopard on. Oh, you have? I did not see African leopard.
Drive-through safari. That has my name written all over it.
I did not see African leopards on their featured animals list, but they do have a rhino. They have some Watusi, I believe, and some giraffe. So good stuff. So go check out Texas Safari Park.
I'm all about the see a billboard on the side of the road and pull off and go. That's my jam.
Before we get into Carter specific and all of the bumbling, stumbling, I mean, Carter had a no good, very bad, rotten day today, and anyone with a hangover that's had to then go do work, especially manual work, I pity him. But man, he is making it hard to like him in this episode. But I want to talk about a conversation Rip and Beth have before we get into the Carter of it all, because I think it maybe sets a tone for a plan that at least maybe Beth has, but I'm not sure how well it works. Rip says to her, this is sunrise now, right? They're all still kind of in their clothes from the night before on the porch. And Rip says, he's done a lot of living for 19, talking about Carter. Beth says, we need to teach him how to be unbreakable. What does that mean to you?
I think that we're talking about resilience again, and it's something that we have talked about in other episodes. And he does have a problem of being a bit of a quitter, and we've seen that. I mean, school's too hard. I quit. I don't know how to do this. I quit. Fuck this shit. I mean, how many times did we see him being kind of a quitter? I think they're just trying to build some more resiliency in him, and I appreciate that. That's a hard thing to do with anybody, teenagers in particular, but he needs it because, she keeps saying hard times are coming, Carter, hard times are coming. And, he's trying to defend himself all the time that I've already been through hard times. You don't scare me kind of thing. And I appreciate that. And he's not wrong. He's gone through much more than the average 19-year-old. And life can get harder. Both things can be true. So I don't know what I feel about the fact that they decided to send him to 10 Pedal the next day. I can't decide. On one hand, I get it that it's you're not going to lay around the house all day and sleep, and we're not going to hold you and rub your back and feel you whatever, we're going to coddle you all day. But I kind of feel maybe there was an in-between between going and getting into the spotlight of the 10 Pedal and also being responsible for animals and other people and your own safety and health, the safety and health of your horse. There was a lot that they were leaving to chance there that I don't know if I would have done the same. What did you think about the idea of just make him ride back from the party? Okay, I'm all cool with that. Make him throw up all the time, laughing and joking at him. But I feel I would have probably put him on light duty if it was me. I don't think I would have put him out there leading anything or being in charge of the gate or things like that for my own self.
Let's listen to this first conversation, because I think this conversation with him and Beth early in the episode sets a tone for kind of what's going to happen afterwards. And this is the start of, you said it perfectly a couple minutes ago, he's a quitter. He is a demonstrated quitter. As much as he wants to say he's become a man, he's a quitter in the way that it seemed like Dwight was a quitter, that he never made it further than Rio Paloma after leaving Alpine, instead of seeing the world like his mother wanted, and that he lied to her about. Like, that seems to be the path that Carter's on. Let's take a listen, because I got more to say on that.
Rip didn't go to school.
Don't think Rip had it all sunshine and fucking roses. He had nothing. He had no choice. You don't just get handed anything in life. You gotta work for it. You gotta be better. Do better. School can help you learn, Carter. Is it the only way? No. When you're given a chance to make your life better, you fucking grab it. Carter, I want you happy. But I need you ready. Ready for the hard parts when they come, and they're coming.
I already had 2 parents die. I figured that out.
You're right. But I'm not sure that's something you ever figure out, Carter. And I'm sorry every day that happened to you.
My dream is to be a cowboy. To be like Rip. Like your dad.
Then you go to work.
I mean, that may be his dream, but he is not prepared in any way to actually follow through with it, and this is a young person thing for sure. I'm not picking on, I'm not trying to pick on Carter. I know episode after episode sounds like we're picking on Carter, but it's the story we're being told, and we need to talk about it. So he's given a lot of good advice. He's given a lot of good advice in this episode. He's been given a lot of good advice in previous episodes, even from Dwight. He was given good episodes. Don't be in such a fucking hurry to grow up so fast. It is vastly overrated. That was Dwight's literal last advice to him, and he didn't listen to that. And he respected Dwight. He was the one that he actually feels grateful towards, is Dwight. And even Dwight was saying, you're doing this backwards. Like, let yourself be taken care of while you can, because life is coming and it is hard. When she says, I want you to be happy, but I need you to be ready, because you got to be ready for when the hard times come, and they are coming. She's not guessing. She's not talking in vagaries. She is telling him it is going to get harder. The hard times are coming, and he's just not listening.
Here's the thing, though. This is a flaw of adults that I often see, and I wonder about if they would step back and look and really think about what they're saying. Saying stuff to a person who has no experience, get ready, be ready. What are you saying? Like, I feel like some of that stuff, it's very hollow as adults. Like, we say stuff like, grow up, be more mature.
Well, how many times did Rip say, get your shit together?
Get your shit together. What do you mean, get your shit together? If you said, there's Pepto-Bismol in the barn, go drink a gallon of water, go lay down in the shade for an hour, and get your shit together. Okay, now you've listed off what getting your shit together means. Get back on a horse and sit in the sun? What are you talking about, getting your shit together? How are you supposed to recover? Which is what they're saying. Recover faster. Recover faster. Be not drunk. I
actually don't think they're saying that. I don't think they're saying that.
Oh, really?
I think
what do you think
they're saying you don't get to lie around because you decided to get drunk.
I get it.
You have to work through it. Right.
But he's not.
But you have
But also, if you're working through it and you're falling off your horse and potentially hurting the horse and yourself, are you actually proving your point? Are you actually doing it? Or are you just sort of this is where, and I'm not one of those parents who are you get off the hook and all this stuff. I'm not saying any of that kind of stuff. I think there should have absolutely been consequences. I think he should have been, throwing hay bales into the barn. I think he could have been mucking the stalls, shovel horse shit all day long. But being on horseback seems like a huge liability for the horse and the rider. And stuff like that, I don't agree with. I don't think that you need to do that. Give him grunt work all day long. But I don't like what they did. And I don't like that he had responsibilities like the gate or the fence or things where he could have like legitimately been hurt and cause a problem for the larger ranch. I kind of think that was just like adult nonsense in a way that like we're teaching you a lesson. But did he learn a lesson, or was he just like humiliated and walked off and he thinks they're all assholes? And like, I don't think they actually got what they wanted out of it. And I don't think he's more resilient for it. Because he wants to now join the sheriff's office, not be a cowboy anymore. So did it work?
There was a novelty T-shirt that I loved growing up. It was a picture of like a pirate, and the caption was, "The beatings will continue until morale improves." And I think Rip's form of teaching Carter a lesson in this episode and showing him what the work is and that you still have to perform well even when you don't feel it was his version of the beatings will continue until the morale improves.
But I disagree, because you don't go back and give him the gloves if that's true.
Why does he do that, though? Let's talk about that. Because the ranch hands are staring. So are the ranch hands staring because Carter is fucking up and they know Rip would be on their asses if it was in the same? Or are they taking pity on Carter and like, you're making his kid bare hand deal with the barbed wire when he looks like shit? Like, I'm not sure, because it's them staring, I think, that is what causes Rip to finally insist that he take the gloves. What did you think from the staring? But why though? Were they staring out of like Nepo baby jealousy that he's getting off easier? Because at that point they hadn't discovered that he had not done the gate up correctly or been pulled from his horse trying to rope. Or were they were they shaming Rip into being like, you're being too hard on this kid and he's not learning anything?
I don't think they're shaming Rip. It's a situation where it's the reverse of everything we've talked about in terms of watching people do their job well. It's the reverse.
Yes,
whatever
which I do
that
not
is.
like.
And so now we're all watching and gawking at someone doing the job poorly. That's how I felt. See, a lot of this stuff is like, you almost got to get into like a different mindset. If he rips up his hands, he's going to be in bad shape for weeks. So what is the point of what we're doing here? Like, some of this is like a practicality thing for me. Like, yeah, we're teaching you a lesson. You forgot your gloves, so you're going to cowboy up.
Does it matter,
That's
though?
not what a cowboy does. Being a cowboy doesn't mean you don't borrow your friend's gloves. This is the kind of the immaturity of Carter.
Right.
Being like, I'm going to cowboy up. I'm going to injure myself to prove a point.
Does it
and
matter?
And that's like, what are you doing?
In judging how Rip handles the situation, does it matter that Carter says, oh shit, I forgot my gloves? And Rip, without hesitation, says, take mine. Carter looks at him and says, no, I'll cowboy up, and then goes to do it. And then again, all the ranch hands staring around, and then he goes and insists he takes glove. He does offer immediately, but again, Carter not wanting to listen, not wanting to take advice. You want to be like, your dream is to be like Rip and John. Rip, who you want to be like, just offered you the gloves because you forgot yours.
The immaturity lies in that he thinks being a cowboy means you would injure your hands before you would share your supplies.
Yeah.
Sharing your supplies is being a cowboy. Being a team is being a cowboy. And he still isn't getting it. What he thinks is it means that everybody has to have their own things and in their own way and do it on their own and do it independently, and you can't have help from anyone else. Like, that's the overall message. I can't have help from Rip and Beth, or else I'm not doing it on my own. All those things. What all those guys were looking at to me were like, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're injuring your hands when we need our hands. This is what our whole livelihood relies on, you being able to use your rope later on today, which he did have to go try to rope the cow, and he lost the rope out of his hands and stuff. The whole behavior of like cowboy up, that was a teenage boy phrase, not what the other men were thinking, which is cowboy up means help each other and be there for each other. And if you forgot something, use mine, and everybody work together. That's cowboying up. So I don't know. I thought that they were staring because it was just such an idiotic decision to rip up the flesh of your hands in order to prove a point, where then later you're going to be a problem because your hands are going to be all cut up and you're not going to be able to help later.
I think for sure Tommy's pretty disgusted at Carter's performance here today, because this is because then he's the one who screams at him, "You've got to triple check the fucking gates every time." Like, he's already done with having them, like, how much they didn't get done today because Carter was there, falling off his horse, looking like, looking like he was still drunk, kind of thing.
That's my exact point. That's my point. When I said, I understand that you have to work through the day, right? You don't get to just lay around and all that stuff. But this is a working ranch. And you don't get to put live animals and live human beings and all the assets that are on that ranch at risk for a lesson for your kid. You don't get to do that. And I feel like that's a lot of what they were looking at too. Like, Rip, what are you doing? Like, it's like being in a factory and the kid put his fingers in the cogs and like the machine's broke now. Like, we're not here for you to have like carpet time where you're going to sit and be like, this is how you be a cowboy. You show up when you're ready to work and you're able to work. We're not here to be your playground like this.
Let's take a step back and before all of the work for the day began, with when he gets ready to puke and Rip says, "Don't you dare puke in my fucking truck," and he pulls over.
And I was okay with all that. I was fine
okay with it
all
too.
that.
And with him busting his balls and pulling the truck and stuff, and him and Azul laughing. I'm getting around to wanting to talk about Azul. And then when they show up, Zachariah says to him, "You want me to go saddle up a longhorn for you?" Like, and Azul calling him booze hound. And he uses a Spanish word, and Rip, like a little boy, is like, "What does that mean? What's that mean?" Like, he wanted to learn a Spanish word to make fun of Carter. Like, all of that stuff. Here's the difference. That's how you treat an adult who shows up all fuck-faced and still has to go to work. But an adult cowboy is going to still be able to perform his job. Carter is not an adult. Yes, age-wise, he's 19, but he is not a man cowboy. He is a boy cowboy. And he doesn't have, it's not the same. Like, you can call him Booze Hound, and like, that's how the whiskey limits, the title of this episode, Azul says, like, he learned his whiskey limit and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's how you bust the balls of like a peer. Carter is not a peer, which I don't think any of them appreciated how ill-equipped he was going to be for the day.
And I think that was all of the shock face was even happening. Was like, wait a minute, they actually brought a child out here to be helping us today. And again, part of the team mentality is you have to trust the guy behind you. You have to trust the other roper next to you. You have to trust that no one's going to lasso your neck on an accident or hurt your horse or do all the things. Like, this is the type of situation where people could get killed. We've seen it. We've seen several things on the Yellowstone.
I mean, if you look
where
at
a horse rearing up kills a guy, where a horse rearing up kills a mom. Like, we've seen this. So I guess why I'm taking it like so much more. Like,
didn't Carter lead to the death of John's horse having to be shot because he was riding him and led him through a hole and broke his ankle? I think that was Carter that was riding him for John, and then they ended up.
There's so many scenarios.
That was Carter now at a 14-year-old. But you know who Carter reminded me a lot of this episode for the original Yellowstone fans out there? This is Jimmy. Carter is Jimmy, except for Jimmy had to work. He was branded and had to work at the Yellowstone because there was a debt and there was money and there was a favor owed to the grandfather. And otherwise he was a meth head that he was literally kidnapped from his own devices. So all of that is not quite the same with Carter, but the ineptitude and the other ranch hands having, and other bunkhouse boys in Lake Yellowstone having to like do their job despite Jimmy being with them because he is an anchor pulling them down. Carter was Jimmy in this episode. I think there's a very good parallel between the two of them.
There's just lots of other jobs he could have been doing. That is my main point. Is like anyone who's like, "Oh, Caroline, he can't just lay in bed all day." Totally agree. But I bet all of those stalls could have been mucked for hours on end. And that would have been a terrible job, and he would have felt like shit, but he wouldn't be endangering anybody else or any of the animals. And that's really what I'm taking issue with. I
would have been a lot more sympathetic for Carter in all of this, and my heart would have gone out to him a lot more, except for the fact that he was so shitty to Azul. Azul here is a really great teammate, because he is willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and try to help him at every stand. When they show up and the gate's out and the cows get loose, Tommy screams at him, but it's Azul who says, "Rookie mistake. It's fine. People make rookie mistakes." And then he's like, "All right, let's go get that horse." And then he ropes the cow, but then gets pulled off of his horse because he can't maintain himself. it's Azul who's like, your horse isn't going to go anywhere. Let's get you checked out. He's trying to be a teammate to him, but Carter just hears an adult telling him what to do. And when he screams at him, I'm happy that Rip finally fucking said something. I was like, don't you fucking yell at him. But man, Azul was nothing but grace, and Carter just pissed in his face. I don't like that.
Again, though, and that's stuff that you can't undo. You know, like this is first impressions in the workplace. This
Even
is his
after
first
that,
supposed day.
When they get back, when they get back to Dutton Ranch, Carter, he storms off. He pouts and storms off. And Azul says to Rip, tough day, viejo. Don't worry, he'll apologize, bro. He's not going to apologize. Like, you are too kind-hearted for this world.
Maybe he will, and maybe obviously what we've seen, everybody's willing to forgive and forget and all that kind of stuff. This isn't what I expected, and I don't think it went well at all in terms of like what Rip and Beth were hoping to accomplish. If they thought that they were helping him like learn some resilience, they didn't read the situation right. If you're still throwing up like 12 hours after you were drinking,
that's very
I
drunk.
feel like you were in much worse shape.
You probably should have gone to the hospital. You probably had mild alcohol poisoning.
Or at least, like I said, just stay in the shade of the barn for the day and do shit work and stay away from everybody else. Definitely break your back. Make him feel like you don't get to lay around and you don't get to relax or anything. But I mean, I don't know. I just can't justify a lot of the stuff that happened.
When Carter rides off after exploding out Azul and Rip yells at him to, don't you fucking yell at him. He gets on his horse and he rides off. He's like, fuck this, I'm done, and rides off. Which, at that point, all episode, I kept waiting for Rip to be Rip. The Rip we know would never have taken any of this shit from any of his ranch hands. And he's going to say, I'm about to play a clip, and I had to cut out the beginning of it where he says, if you were any other ranch hand, I would have fired you. No, Rip, if he was any other ranch hand, you would have beat the shit out of him for his behavior today. Not for his action, but for his words. Like, that would not have been okay by the Rip that we know. So the fact that he gives Carter a pass tells me he's not ready to treat him to the same standard that he's going to treat Azul, Zachariah, Nico, Austin, and all the other guys at Tempedal. But I think he does give good advice here. But again, Carter's just not listening. Let's take a listen.
We're going to talk, or you're just going to stare at me?
Any other hand that rode the fuck away from me, I would have fired their ass.
Do it then.
Carter, I've lost more than I've won in this life. But I've learned more from my failure than any success. We don't get to choose the pain, but we get to choose how we build from it. Understand?
You'll never be my father.
No, I won't.
I got two people who think they're saviors because they took in an orphan.
Guess what? You ain't the only orphan in this family. I know what it feels like.
I ain't the only asshole either.
It is a weak man who responds to someone saying, I'm an orphan, and someone saying, I'm an orphan too. I know what it feels like, which I think is an invitation to, like, let's talk. Like, I can empathize with you, not sympathize with you. I can empathize with you. And his says, you're not the only, not the only asshole either. Carter, like, you don't even want to help. You don't even want to help yourself. You just want to be misunderstood. That's my problem. He actively and willfully just wants to be misunderstood. How many times in this episode is someone saying to him, I get it. I have been where you have been. Azul, rookie mistake. We make mistakes. Check yourself out. Rip saying, I've lost so much, and I can tell you, I've been down the road you've been down. I am an orphan too. Take my hand and let me show you. Rip shows a lot of restraint there, because the part I cut out is Carter wraps his little tiny fist into a ball, and Rip sees it and steps at him and says, you want to take a swing? Because that felt like where this had to go. But of course he's not. He's terrified because he's a little boy. But he's a little boy that just wants to be misunderstood. That's what's so maddening and frustrating to me.
Here's my deal. First of all, we spent a really long time talking about this kid at this point, not just in this episode, but collectively in this entire season of everything. I think there's more interesting parts to this story than him. And we're spending so much time on him. I'm asking you guys as listeners, are you guys enjoying this? Is this what you want as a viewer on your television set? Do you want 20 minutes of a 30-minute episode being spent on someone saying, you're not my dad, stamp, 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 you're an asshole, blah, blah. Is that why you're watching Dutton Ranch? Because for me, I can say it's not. And I get it that we can learn more about some of the other characters. Like for a lot of people who are maybe just joining us for Dutton Ranch, maybe they don't know Rip is an orphan. Maybe they don't know anything about Rip's background. So this is an opportunity for you to learn more about that character. Since we all came from Yellowstone, we already know about these characters and we already get why they're saying the things they're saying and what they're doing. I'm just wondering if this is entertaining TV for those who are just getting the Carter story side of it all and not really, not wondering why we're spending so much time with this kid.
Right. I'm not looking for Dutton Ranch on the CW. And I'm not saying that's what this is.
Which we've already said. I don't even want to go down that road because we've actually had that entire conversation. Again, he's already yelled at Rip and Beth. We've already done this.
And he wasn't even done. I'm not going to play the clip because I do want to move along here. But right after he leaves Rip, he grabs his keys. Beth, the woman who is taking care of him.
Why does he get to take his truck?
Right.
Mr. Independent. My first thing would be like, I'll take those keys. If we're the assholes who do nothing for you.
He's walking away from her. She is calling him and he is just walking away from her. I can't believe this is the second time now that if Rip watched how he was treating Beth, that he would not intercede and be cool with it. It's one thing for him to have his own interactions and he walks away from Rip and Rip goes, fuck. It's another thing. I can't see Rip allowing anyone to disrespect Beth the way he does in the very next scene. And it puts her in a position of having to apologize to him for not being there for him. What in the fuck are we talking about? She held his hand as his dad, who OD died when he was 14 and has taken care of him every minute since for 5 years. What more could you possibly do for this 19-year-old? You are trying to set him up in every way possible. But this is all ass backwards. I don't want parents fucking apologizing to their children for doing all of the shit that they could possibly do. That is a bad precedent and is nonsense.
And being really open. How many times have they come to him and said, what is something you'd like to talk about? Like, they're not just coming at him with an agenda all the time saying, here's what you need to learn and here's how you're going to learn it. That's not what they're doing. They both have come individually and they have come as a couple and sat as a family and said, it really seems like you're struggling. Let's talk about this. What can we talk about? No one has ignored Carter's mental health. Everyone has tried to speak with him, including Azul, including Zachariah, including Dwight, including Oriana.
Including Sheriff Wade, who advised him.
Everyone's tried.
Sheriff Wade saw at the party last week before anything even got going. He saw him staring daggers at Oriana and Harrison and said, don't. You don't want any of that smoke because that's not going to end well for you.
2 minutes after, Everett was just having a heart-to-heart with him. Like, he's acting like he is just a lonely man on an island all by himself. And in reality, he has so many caring adults who are all trying to talk to him, all trying to give him, whatever space he needs, whatever support he needs. I don't know how much more the show could be role modeling what you can do.
I do want to play the beginning of this clip because it made me laugh. Hold on. Just real quick. I'm not going to play the entire clip, and I am going to play the beginning.
Carter, what happened?
Beth, I grew up between Montana and Texas. No one noticed.
Shit, Carter. Forgive me if I didn't hear your balls drop on the ride down here.
And then he says, fuck this to her. But that made me laugh out loud. Like, what? You sound like such a baby, such a child. You know what grown men don't ever need to say? I'm a grown man. That's grown men don't need to say they're a grown man. You have your own fucking big diesel truck. Like they're letting you go fish with a strange woman.
Why does he have a big diesel truck? because he was handed it to him. Right. You know, he didn't earn it. He didn't buy it with his own money. He didn't do, I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, he's trying to act like he's so independent, but he has no actual demonstrated skills or ability to do any of the things that he's screaming that he can do. I don't know. Again, I don't want to belabor this because it is a situation where, hey, we all have real teenagers in our house. It is not entertaining to parent. I don't
need to see on my TV what I'm living in my real life. Yeah. I mean,
it's not. It's not fun. And so I'm ready for Carter to find a path, and I'm okay with him struggling along the way. I'm okay with the show role modeling how you can support a teenager growing into adulthood. All good. But also, like, they need
I don't
to
think
hit
I want 20 minutes
more.
of a 44-minute episode on it, though.
Yep, because there's too much other stuff.
Let's finish him off, though, because Sheriff Wade, he winds up at Dwight's place. He's sitting in front of Xena, the African leopard's now empty cage because she's at Zufari Park. Sheriff Wade comes out of, like, the bushes and says, "You want to talk?" So Carter called Sheriff Wade to Dwight's farm, and he showed up. That's odd to me. And he says, out of nowhere, he says, "I want a job. I want to come work for you." And Wade is like, "Get the fuck out of here. At a minimum, you need a GED and a basic peace officer course." Carter's response is, "Do I? If Dwight was here, I think he'd say differently." Are you trying to blackmail the sheriff to give you a job? When? That's not how blackmail works. You don't blackmail someone to give you an entry-level deputy sheriff job. You don't see the problem with that? But that's what he's trying to do here, right? He's basically saying, he's invoking Dwight's name as, "Remember, I know what you did."
I guess so. The whole thing seemed like, again, like he's just misrepresenting, how powerful he thinks he is or whatever else.
Even in the scene, Sheriff Wade says to him, "You get one time to to question my integrity." Dude, he does it to you like 3 times in the scene, and yet you're still being patient with him. Carter doesn't have any idea the way he is coasting on people's patience. Because in the real world, any one of the things he did in this episode would get him at minimum an ass whipping, if not actually like locked up. You're underage drinking on someone else's property in front of the sheriff.
It's crazy.
That's 2 offenses minimum. You could be thrown back in a car again.
Listen, let's just throw our hands up. This is one of those times when even as TV parents, we need to put our hands up and say, "I'm done with you, Carter, for the day."
Last bit. So Carter going into the finale, we think he's going to be, because the conversation with this, "I need to leave," and Beth is like, "Yes, okay, you go, but remember this place is always your home." Is he just going to take up at Dwight's place now? Is that what you think we're going to see in the finale? Just putting the guest hat on?
If that is what he's doing, I don't know why he has any right to do it. I mean, like we said, it's not his house. It's not his land. He has no money to keep the lights on or to buy food or to do anything. He doesn't have a horse. He doesn't, so he can't go really help anybody else. If he does do that, it's TV magic because it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Any idea that he needs to like head off down the path all alone, I mean, I guess if that's how his season ends, I feel like we were just going through like a teenage tantrum for an entire season.
I mean, I think there's something interesting about him with Beth Dutton and Rip Wheeler as your, informally adopted parents, you choosing to live the life of Dwight. And I think it would be the fulfillment of what we guessed Carter's path would be when when we asked ourselves, what is Dwight about? What is the utility of Dwight? And we said it's kind of like Anakin and Darth Vader, right? Dwight was he represented a road down which Carter could be heading and now seemingly is choosing to head down. So I think there is something interesting there, but also I don't want to spend half of an episode about it though either.
But then at the same time, so you're using a lot of different words, okay? So in that analogy, it sounds like you're saying Dwight is Darth Vader. And I don't think he's that. And because he's not actually a good villain.
I meant like looking down your path, like more like,
I understand, but let's just keep going here. So the idea that I don't think he's becoming a villain per se, okay? At one point in this whole thing, he's saying, "I want to be a cowboy like your dad," and Rip. And then by the end of the episode, he's saying he wants to be a sheriff or work in the sheriff's department, be in law enforcement. okay, that's not at all what Rip and Sean do or did. And in fact, they are very much on the other side of that in a lot of ways.
Unless he's talking about the Livestock Commission, which I do not think he's talking about.
No, I don't think he even knows about that very much.
No, I don't think so either.
For me, I don't even know what he's chirping about. Like, I don't know what he wants out of Sheriff Handy. I don't know what he thinks he would do in a sheriff's office. It's like if you sat him down and you said, what do you think a job is in the sheriff's office? What do you think you would do? What do you think entry level is? Like, because honestly, it would probably be like the maintenance man janitor emptying the trash cans. Like, what is it you think you're even asking for? Because I can't even figure that part out. And I don't think you just get to live in some other man's house. I don't think anyone would.
I don't think so.
I don't think anyone would be okay with that.
And I doubt Dwight had time to make or change a will to leave it all to Carter. That seems unlikely to me.
I'm sure the man didn't have a will.
I'm sure he did not either. So I wonder if part of this is, remember how they took the time to show us when he was with Oriana on their first quote unquote date, him shooting the bottles and showing him actually having some pretty good accuracy with a gun. Maybe that's what he's thinking. Maybe he's thinking I get to carry a gun and shoot people like you guys shot Dwight. You know, maybe that's what he thinks it's about. And he wants to put those skills to use because he's, at least with a hangover, is not a very good cowboy.
Are they going to move him over to the Marshals?
No.
Like, what are we doing with this
I don't
character
know.
in the Yellowstone universe? Are we shoving him over somewhere? Maybe he needs to go live at his uncle's house and him and Tate can hang out?
I know there are a lot of fans out there that do want these two to get together because they are of the same age, basically. I mean, I guess actually Tate, they're slow rolling is like, I think 3 years younger, but they're similar enough in age and of the Dutton-esque lineage. I know there is a lot of crossover clamoring out there. But
maybe that's what they're going to do. And maybe that's why he's asking to join law enforcement. And that's what we're setting up. Because, I mean, your concept of like a backdoor pilot works, but there's already shows he can go on. He doesn't need his own pilot. He can just go somewhere else.
My guess is that he is going to actually initially not become a whole villain. When I was talking about Darth Vader, I was thinking of that clip when in Phantom Menace, little Anakin is on Tatooine and they show the shadow. And the shadow is that shadow was the Dwight's future, kind of like it was representing like you are standing in the shadow of what could become your life by hanging out with Dwight. My guess is what they're going to do with him, because it's the only thing that really makes sense, because I don't see him reuniting with Beth and Rip for a while, right? Now that we've gone down this road, I feel like there needs to be some distance for them. So it makes sense to me. The way that we have been guessing people like Austin, which does seem like it's going to come true based on this episode, maybe Joaquin being taken over or gathered up by Beth and Rip as allies. There's something that's interesting to me that with Oriana's connection, if he becomes allied with Oriana and through Oriana with Rob Will. Because what better way to get to Rip and Beth, who we know Rob Will does not want to be around, than going through, you know, because Oriana, the first thing she says when she sees Beth at the hospital is, how is Carter? Is Carter okay? Which is interesting that given what happened, her first question for him was concern about if he's okay. So there's something interesting there that if he picks up the Dwight fraudster, swindler, thief kind of mantle, well, that makes him a natural ally.
He's smart enough to do any of that stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think, like, what is he bringing to the table? He can't be an enforcer. He's not like brute strength.
He could be an infiltrator, though.
Of Rip and Beth?
Oriana can get in his ear if Rob Will, talks to her and send him back and get him information. Because if
Beth and Rip?
Yeah, let's say he was sitting around, they wouldn't have thrown him out of that room if he was sitting around the table listening to Austin spill 10 Petal secrets. Now he can go back and be like, Austin was at our place last night talking all sorts about y'all's like illegal plans and stuff. Like, he's an asset to be manipulated in the same way that you and I guessed early on in the season that Rip and Beth may collect people to infiltrate and be spies for them on the inside of 10 Petal. I think there's something that makes Carter much more interesting if he becomes a pawn of Rob Will via Oriana.
He is going to have to become a much stronger character just generally. Like, he doesn't have any of the skill set to be ruthless. He doesn't have any of that stuff going right now. I mean, there's potential always. But
I'm just spitballing. I don't know.
No, and is Rob Will looking to take on like a baby? You know what I mean? Like because he's not really. I mean, he's a pretty.
Well, no, I would imagine Oriana would be doing much
know?
of the interfacing.
Right, I'm with you. That obviously should have to be like a handler. I'm just thinking like if I'm Rob Will, like would I be like no?
Knowing how he feels about her and the puppy dog stuff, if you were so inclined, Carter actually makes a ton of sense as a guy who doesn't. All she has to do is, Carter. You know what? I've been thinking about it. I think I do love you too. And then he's going to be like, whatever you would like me to do, I will do.
Yeah, I mean, he's easily manipulated. I just don't know if he has the chops, to the next part. Whatever, like, not that he's not willing, but is he able? Because we're seeing a lot of hasn't been able. He is going to want to do some sort of big thing because they did set that up. I mean, they were like, you're just going to have to trust that she's going to come back to you kind of thing.
Right.
So they did set up the idea of like some sort of big something to get her
and
attention.
that she did ask about him, so that's the parallel to them saying you have to have the trust part comes in her coming back to you. Or coming back around to you. And then we did hear her ask after him. So, which is like one of her only lines in the episode. So let's stay in the hospital. Let's play this first clip because everyone has questions for Beulah. First, it's going to be Joaquin. Then it's going to be Beth. Then it's going to be Everett. Everyone is questioning her and what she could possibly be thinking by leaving the business and naming Rob Will as her successor. Let's listen to this first clip with her and her boys.
Keno, I need you to make peace with your brother.
You lied to me.
I changed my mind. I need you to fall in line.
Well, that's the best trick he knows.
And make no mistake, you need him a lot more than he needs you.
Oh, he's the one who needs to find a new job.
Oh, stop it. You're a fine cowboy, but you're not a true cattleman. Not like Rip Wheeler. And you got a fine head for business, but you don't have best killer instinct.
Well, they're gone too.
Robert William, you are so goddamned weak. That's why I'm leaving the ranch to you. It's not your prize, it's your protection. And Beth and Rip, they're assets. So y'all don't end up in here or somewhere far worse. You're my sons, and you're linked at the hip. Whether you like it or not, from cradle to grave.
I'll fetch my shovel.
Robo was exhausting in that exchange for me.
Well,
I was like,
he can't get out of his own way. Like, again, just like Carter, he's not listening. I think insofar as this is the situation she is in now, what she said makes the most sense. Joaquin, you need Rob Will. Rob Will, you need Joaquin. Together, you make a semi-competent cattleman.
You make one individual.
You make like 80% of a functioning human cowboy. Right. But the fact of naming like you need each other and you both desperately need Beth and Rip to help you keep the ranch going, their assets to be used. All of that actually makes sense. How did you think she handled smoothing these egos? As we see, it did not work. Joaquin is renouncing the family name to Sheriff Wade by the end of this night. So it doesn't seem like it worked great, but do you think it mollified at least Rob Will to not try and take action in the immediate against Rip and Beth? I don't know, because part of this is we have to take into account Beth's conversation with her, which we're just going to talk through. I didn't pull the clip for it, but the idea of none of this is happening. She's not dead. This angioplasty was fast. She's already on her feet, leaving the hospital. So she's going to be still running, we can assume, the 10 pedal for a while. Did this conversation work for you as an explanation? Do you think it worked on her sons in any way?
I think it showed her maturity. Like I said, like when I said at the beginning of this, like we're not even at where she's at in terms of perspective and in terms of being like, look, you like she was just exhausted. Like quit with the one-liners. Like just listen. We're talking about business at this point. Quit with I'm gonna get the shovel and stuff. Like it's boring. And even for her at this point, like she's like, y'all are not like little boys like tussling around in the dirt, like you're adult men and we have a business to run. I mean, she said it so many times. She's so tired. And I think she's just so tired of this entire thing. No, I don't actually think that she's really made any inroads at all with either of these two. I don't know what Rob Will understands about what has been agreed to with Rip and Beth, because he just came in on the scene at the party. He doesn't really have a lay of the land in terms of like, I mean, what does he know about the Zane deal? What does he know about what's going on in the bunkhouse? Like,
right.
So part of this is like, it is just like all this bluster with him where like
very knee-jerk reactions. Yeah.
Well, he doesn't even know what their jobs are or what they've brought to the table. So it's sort of like silly. Like, why are you saying you're going to throw them out on their ear when you have no idea what is even happening at the house, you know?
I mean, there's this difference I read about a book a long time ago where the person was making the difference between intelligent and cunning. Rob Will is cunning. He is not intelligent. And I think Joaquin is intelligent, but maybe not particularly cunning. Do you know what I mean? Like the idea of like scheming and conniving. I think that's where Rob Will excels, and I think Joaquin is intelligent and probably tries to scheme, but doesn't seem to be particularly good at it. I think Joaquin, like the Hat, thinks himself more capable in getting his hands dirty than he really is, and I think Rob Will can only engage in getting his hands dirty. Going back to the Carter of it all again, I think Rob Will is another fascinating possible road for someone like Carter to go down. If paths are Rip and John on one path, Dwight on like a middle path, and then a Rob Will on the third path, right now he's only demonstrating the level of intelligence and resilience and determinedness of a Dwight, or maybe potentially, if he takes a villain turn, a Rob Will. It's interesting to use these adults as kind of maybe markers for what paths possibly Carter could go down. But yeah, this is the second time now that Rob Will has invoked shovel symbology when talking about his brother. Remember when they were going to find Wes's body, he says, I bet you're thinking about braining me with that shovel. And he's like, you know I would do it to you.
He's so tiresome in that way. Like, it's just the same old, like, he does so much threatening and honestly, so little action in a lot of ways. I mean, outside the very first episode, he's a lot of threats, you know? And I know he did it in the first episode, so we know he has it in him. I mean, they established that he's willing to kill someone, but I really wish that there would be a little more dimension to him in terms of being able to work with Beulah. He's like demanding the crown, and it's like once you have the crown on your head, he feels like, what are you gonna do now?
Right, like that's all
suck
the work.
Your thumb
right,
on the
like,
crown, like on the throne, like. What are you doing? Like, it doesn't sound like he has a plan for the ranch, or like, you know, like normally in a story like this, he would have some alternative idea of how they should be running the ranch or a direction they should be going that was in conflict with Beulah. And so it's like, now I have the reins. Now we're finally going to do this, whatever this is. I'm going to put a stripper pole in the middle of the living room or whatever it is that you think you're going to turn this place into. But he doesn't actually seem like he has something he wants to do with the ranch or with their business in general. So I don't know why he's so insistent. It is just power, but it's like, and then he just wants to go do coke in the other room. Seems to be what he wants to do.
You made me think of when you said sucking his thumb. Is it the sheriff in the cartoon Robin Hood? The
it's
Disney
Robin
cartoon?
Hood. It's King John.
It's King John who sucks his thumb with the crown on his head. You know, I just had a stark image. If anyone talented out there
That's
wants
what
to,
I was conjuring for you.
Wants to make a picture of Rob Will's face on King John in the cartoon Robin Hood sucking his thumb, we would appreciate the artwork. So get on that, guys. Yeah, I think Rob Will, all he thinks about is threats. I don't think he has any concept of what's actually involved in running the business or particularly have any desire to do it. I think he just wants to say he's the one in charge and eliminate threats. I think that's the only thing that gets him excited, that and doing bumps of coke. After this, Beth shows up later, who she's there ostensibly to apologize for Carter. She brings flowers. She makes a joke that I should have brought you whiskey. But right after she apologizes and they have the conversation where Beulah's very okay with everything and is, you know, hell-raising boys, I have my own, you know, the boys will be boys kind of thing. Beth shifts it to maybe what her real intention was here. Your retirement announcement was unexpected, and it changes things. Beulah is quick to say, no, it doesn't. Why would it change anything? Beth is interesting here because she makes the exact same argument that Zane does, which made me wonder to myself, had these two spoken off screen? Because it's identical. She says, I agreed to work with you, not with your son. That's literally almost, I mean, it's almost different words, but the sentiment is exactly what Zane says. I made this deal to work with you and tell your story. Your son's a drug addict. And Beth continues, your son is a mistake and a liability, which is really bold talk for Beth, considering what transpired the night before. But I'm proud of Beth for saying it. And Beulah knows it. As she says, I won't apologize for my son or for myself. But she doesn't say you're wrong.
It's weirder than that. First, she says, I feel like we spend our whole lives apologizing for our children.
Right.
Then she says, I won't apologize for my child. So that was like kind of wackier in that. Here's the deal. I think this is all wild that we're doing this within like 10 hours of this woman having gone down in the middle of the party. It felt like we should have had like at least like a day or two time jump or something, which would have even gotten us out of the Carter hangover mess. And we could have actually been dealing with this in a way that it didn't feel like this woman like literally just woke up out of an angioplasty. Like, it was all happening so fast. Everyone was piling on Beulah so hard. I mean, I felt like the only answer she could say is, I'm so tired and I can't apologize for myself anymore. And I'm sick of all of this stuff. Between Everett and Beth and Rob Will and Joaquin and everyone hounding her, I was like, give this woman a freaking second, to just catch her breath. She literally had like oxygen tube in her nose not but a couple hours ago. Like, goodness,
now, she does say to Beth what she did not say to her sons. And I can't remember if she says it to Zane, but she says, none of this is happening soon. And Beth takes the message, the unspoken message of let's stop talking about it, and says, we'll continue this at a later date when you're back when you're out of the hospital and back on your feet, which is smart with Beth because you can only push it so far. When she says, I'm not going to apologize, after she said she won't apologize, she spend your life apologizing and then says, I won't apologize for, he's my son. I won't apologize for him or for myself. Beth takes the hint not to prosecute or push the agenda anymore, but it's definitely not going to be the last time it comes up. But then Everett comes wandering in. Later on, she's sleeping. She wakes up, finds him reading the far empty book that we discussed at the beginning, and they have this conversation.
Why choose Rob Will?
Why wear your wedding ring?
Because I'm still married.
Yeah.
Not that I want to be with her, if that's what you're asking.
Well, sometimes the important thing is to choose. Keno may be my son, but he's not my flesh and blood. Not like Rob Will. I love him. I do. But Rob Will's the choice I felt I had to make.
Yeah, and how about when he runs your ranch into the ground?
I don't know that I have it in me to care anymore.
No?
No. I'm tired, Everett. I'm so fucking tired. I just want to get on with the getting on.
When I watched you almost die, well, I hate to waste a shot at love just because I'm so damn stubborn.
Well, I'd hate it too.
What I'm trying to say is, I'm ready to take that final ride with you, if you are.
Okay, let's talk about the first part of that, because she says it was a decision I felt I had to make. She also says, Joaquin, I love him, but he's not flesh and blood, not like Rob Will is. Now, the fact that she has that argument ready, but was ready to name Joaquin as her successor until Rob Will showed up, I think is interesting, because she was going to name him successor, but she always had this argument locked and loaded also.
There was a lot of confusing parts to this, to be honest with you. It did seem like if Rob Will came back and pushed her hand, this was always going to be what she was going to say. Because actually, if you go back to even when Joaquin brought it up to her and was like, why don't you just pass it off to me? And she was like, I can't, kind of thing. Like, she said it even to him several episodes ago when she was drunk. So it's like when she was like, when her like defenses are down, this is the argument. that it's Rob Will and it's always been Rob Will. When she's not drinking and she's sitting and writing a speech, she seems to be more able to, make a choice that we all think makes more sense.
It was supposed to be Oriana 4 episodes ago. Remember, you have to be perfect if you're ever going to run
eventually. But at the same time, it just feels like I thought when you said let's take this from the beginning, I thought you were going to take it from really the beginning. I thought you were talking about the wedding ring, because I'm over here thinking I thought that his wife died.
Yes.
And
hold on.
Yeah, okay. I need to talk this out because I'm confused about a couple parts. I thought she died, and if she did die, then is his comment not that I want to be with her, meaning not that he's done living? Is that where we're going with that? Or is it truly I still wear it because I'm married, but that woman's still alive and still out there somewhere, which I hope would mean and comes into play at some point, because otherwise, why are we talking about this?
Yeah, I went back to episode 2 because I knew we had heard him mention his wife before. And I think you and I, when we heard this clip, had both assumed she had died. So it's a very short clip, and there's actually no indication that she's dead in the clip. But I think you and I both definitely assumed it because we hadn't seen or heard from her, and the way he goes around being a vet seems like he is a widower or at least not married. But let's listen to this clip really quickly of him and Rip from the end of episode 2.
I was all for putting that mare down. Your wife felt different. She was damn convincing.
No shit, I live with her. She don't take the word no very easy.
I could fill a dictionary with words when it came to my wife.
I think I have that same dictionary.
When it came to my wife, that is past tense, yeah?
That's how I heard it.
That's how I heard it too. So I was very confused like you. Is she still alive? Because yes, let's bring her into the show. That is something I very much want to watch.
I don't know. So that brought up something kind of interesting that I think we should put up on our board. Is Everett actively married to a woman who is alive and out in the world somewhere? And that's why he's always been a little bit more cooled off on Beulah. And so was Beulah always an affair, even during their marriage, and potentially even what caused the breakup of their marriage? Was it the loss of their son Levi? Is that what caused the breakup of his marriage? That's common. That's very high percentage. People break up after losing a child. I don't know. That brought a lot of question marks about Everett.
Right, because
and the concept of choosing, right? As if he's been walking a line between his wife and Beulah this whole time. Because she was the important thing is just to choose. Not necessarily what the choice is, not which one's better, but just to finally make a decision which one you're going with. That implies they had an affair.
I agree with you, because the only other reading, like you said, is if she is dead, then when he says not that I want to be with her, then he's just saying not that I want to be dead too. And I'm wearing my ring because if you think back, we actually just had this when we were covering the Madison, where the brother was talking about his wife who had died. She had been hit by a cab, and he still considered him married because it's death to they part, but death to when he parts, not when she goes. So this idea of we're still married even beyond the grave, is that what he means? Those are the only two possible readings, but I think it's far more interesting what you're saying is if she is out there and he had been having an affair this entire time, or what is the deal? I mean, I guess in the setting up the finale board, this is actually a very fascinating piece of information because we need more context.
It's small.
Yeah.
It's very, very small, but I would love to know. I mean, that was one of the more interesting dangling threads that I was I need to know more about what's going on over here. Beulah was obviously, they were very excited to get back together again and be a couple. And, the fact that they were having their little Thelma and Louise kind of ish moment where it was run out of the hospital together. And they actually had to run, as if someone was going to grab her and everything. That was all very cute and added some levity to a situation that otherwise was a lot of yelling between a lot of people and a lot of people just being mad.
In a vacuum, these two are actually very sweet with each other.
Yeah.
It's just hard to think that they're not both going to turn into horrible villains. We know Beulah is doing bad stuff. Austin's story, which we're going to get to here in a couple minutes. the Tempedal is crooked, it is dirty, it is involved in bad things. Beulah is, if not the only head of the snake, she's one of the heads of the snakes. So, but in isolation, though, I actually found this all very sweet. And again, I can't believe a vet would rush his love out of the hospital kind of thing. But we saw her convince Mariano, right, to do things that he maybe didn't want to do in the past. You know, we've seen Oriana convince men to do things that maybe they don't want to do, but they're under the spell. There is a manipulation factor that we are seeing between the Jackson ladies. It's interesting. Did you get the impression that that was the first time she had been to his place, the way she was walking around and looking at things?
If not the first time in a long time. Like it seemed like she was recognizing that nothing had changed over a long period of time, right? Like the pictures on the wall had been the same pictures on the wall all this time, whether she's seen that before or whether or not she knew where the bedroom was, I felt like, because she was like walking right there. So maybe it was just like coming back to an old haunt. Again, if they had had affairs, that they had done something there, then it was familiar to her, but also a little haunty.
Or maybe never there if he had a wife that was there. So
yeah,
it's more
just
maybe
the way she was looking.
It was very taboo-y, like almost,
yeah,
you know.
But also like kind of like she didn't want to mess with anything, touch anything, do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like frozen in time to me, like from exactly another time in their lives.
A lot of old pictures hanging on the walls, which presumably leading into his bedroom. The hallway that she was kind of peeking down, that back wall was filled with old-looking photos, not new photos, but like a very, very elaborate collage photo wall. So frozen in time does feel right. What do you think of her idea? Because he says, "Why, Rob Will?" She counters with, "Why do you still wear a ring?" And then she gets to the point of sometimes the point is to choose. What do you think of that as an argument in all of this? Because if that's her governing philosophy, I think that's very important, that it doesn't actually matter so much who I chose as much as I made a choice.
Well, it does seem like both in her Everett experience and her mothering experience, the whole like which way is she going to go or which way is the situation going to go has dictated the majority of her life. And so I can understand why for her, the actual outcome isn't as important as much as she's just done waffling between the two things. And, you know, like Everett finally saying, "I'm ready to take the ride with you," her finally saying, "Rob Will," it was just, you know, just getting some closure and finally being able to take the next step. And even if the next step is a disastrous relationship or the entire business goes down the tubes, either one, at least we're gone to the next step. And she's done staying in this limbo land, which seems to have been like the most difficult thing for her. It's just the not knowing.
If y'all are keeping track of Hat Watch, Everett, even though still in the party clothes, they were all still in their party clothes in the hospital, he had switched back to his HAL 3 cap instead of his black cowboy hat. So he keeps it in his truck, I guess, maybe?
Probably.
So he had switched it back instead of keeping the black cowboy hat on. For whatever the metaphor continues to be with between the two hats of good guy, bad guy, or, you know, whatever it means. Let's talk about Joaquin. He had some interesting dangling threads to introduce us to at the end of the episode. One, I'm surprised that he goes to Sheriff Wade and just hands over the gun and says, that's the gun that killed, you know, that's Rob Will's gun. That's the gun that killed Wes Ayers. Obviously, the sheriff says, "Where's the body?" He says, "I don't know. I am working on it," which is a very funny response. Were you surprised because he renounces his family's name, because Sheriff Wade says, "Your family is such a headache." He's like, "I'm not one of them anymore." But right after that, though, Sheriff Wade kind of starts blowing him off. He takes a phone call. He says, "Leave the gun. You can go. Close the door." Are you surprised at Sheriff Wade being so blasé with Joaquin, especially with a gun just being dropped on his desk? Are you surprised that Joaquin did this step? That this is a nuclear option. You're turning your brother in. You're turning Rob Will in.
I think as soon as Beulah made the announcement, that's what pulled the nuclear option. I don't think it was Joaquin handing over the gun. And so in that case, he's just following the dominoes now, you know, of like, okay, well, now what do I have to do to take Rob Will down? I'm not going to bluster in his face and say I'm going to kill you constantly like Rob Will does, but I have my own ammunition. And I mean, I was surprised he did it. I was surprised that we saw it again in this episode, given given that it was the penultimate. Like, it could have happened in the next one and been like a real, oh, what's going to happen in season 2? But because him turning over the gun, landed with such a colossal thud, and it didn't actually, go anywhere, the sheriff was not impressed. He was not freaked out. I have to imagine he already guessed that Wes was dead whenever Whitney came and did the missing persons report. So none of this was like really a shock to the sheriff, in my opinion. And the fact that he was just being furnished with one piece of the evidence, it was like, okay, that's fine. But again, we have a missing persons. Do you have the body? And he doesn't. I think Joaquin, his eyes and his body language said like this was a really scary thing for him to do, to come there and do this. Like, he really thought this was going to be like an explosive moment. And he did not get that at all. And so do you think the sheriff is just keeping his powder super dry and on the inside he's like, oh shit? Or is this really just that much of like a wah-wah? I already knew the Jacksons killed Wes. Like, this isn't exciting.
I think in the hierarchy of power, him saying I'm no longer one of them, together with I think if you were to ask Sheriff Wade who he fears most, I think Beulah and Rob Will sit well above Joaquin in the fear list. So Joaquin coming with information which is going to put Sheriff Wade in the crosshairs of Rob Will and or Beulah. He may not know which one at this point, or both of them. I think he's much more terrified of them than Joaquin. Now you add in Joaquin saying, I'm not even one of them anymore. I'm not part of that family. I think he's no different than anyone else just wandering in to the sheriff's office now. I think he tells him, he's like, I don't care about what you think or you anymore. Because Joaquin says, don't you know who I am? He's like, I don't really care anymore. Please close the door on your way out. I think that shook Joaquin. I think the evaporation of power that he probably really didn't even actually have that much of, or nearly as much of to begin with. Remember their last conversation where he was talking about, remember who paid for your seat? You and I had the conversation of, it seems like the Jackson money just isn't being very effective in getting results. This is like a further escalation of that now firmly on Joaquin. I think Joaquin is a guy without a safety net now.
I don't think he realized how middle management he was.
Yeah.
I think he thought he was like his part of his butt cheek was on the throne, he thought.
Right.
And I
it was a folding chair in the back.
Well, or just that you really just are my messenger boy, between right. I am Beulah or I am the powerful, and whether I make you go to whomever it is, Mariano, maybe it's the sheriff, maybe it's, someone at the auction house, you truly are just my errand person. And he definitely thought himself more powerful than that. So I actually thought that Joaquin as a character was responding appropriately in that way. Like, you saw him realize how little power he had, not just now in this moment because Rob Will was named, but also the lack of power he's really had this whole time. And I don't think he realized that at all. But I really want to focus on the sheriff for a moment, please, because I really am curious. Do you think he already made the assumption that the Jacksons killed Wes, and so none of this was a surprise to him and he didn't really care? Or is this like I'm going to keep my powder totally dry in front of this guy, but God, now another headache? Like, I don't know where to put him on a scale of 1 to 10 as to like how big of an actual issue is this for the sheriff at all.
I actually think it's a bigger issue now than if the gun had never shown up, because I am sure he is sure Rob Will probably specifically, but certainly Ten Petal was responsible for Wes Ayers. More likely than not being killed. Now he knows he is. And probably for Whitney Ayers disappearing, maybe being killed. We don't know. We haven't seen her since she was making a run for it. I think he 1,000% thought that they were responsible. Now that he has proof, we've seen Sheriff Wade a couple times in the season willing to do nothing until his hand was forced. And then he's kind of grousing about the fact that now he has to go actually do something. I think it's easier for him to turn a blind eye to the situation as long as it's not being confronted to him. I think Joaquin showing up with a gun creates an issue that he was perfectly fine to let lie. Who other than Austin is really still screaming about Wes Ayers? No one. And no one's really, no one's
out of the picture.
Right. And no one's screaming about Chet, and no one's really screaming about Whitney either. Sleeping dogs were lying. And now Joaquin has come in with this gun. A gun, by the way, just to connect our threads, probably still has Rip's handprints on it from the last person to touch it. It's been in that plastic bag that he took it out of since Rip handed it back to Chet Chet put it in a plastic bag. It's been in that bag, I think, since, because that looked like the same bag that he empties it out onto the sheriff's desk. So that's a whole other issue. If they're going to run it for fingerprints, I don't know if Rip Wheeler even has fingerprints on file.
That is one of the questions I was going to say, but is Rip Wheeler in the system? So
he doesn't really exist. It's a made-up name, so it's interesting.
So
yeah, will
that actually be a problem?
I think it's definitely something that the sheriff is going to have to deal with now. But I think his attitude towards Joaquin was, it's Don Draper in the elevator. I don't think about you I don't think about you at all, and I think that really shook Joaquin because, like you said, pieces were starting to fall into place, right? The conversation after Beulah hires Beth and he's like, what was she doing here? And she tells him that, like, you can't run anything. Like, you're not the guy. And just then not being named successor, just there have been a bunch of little indignities along the way, which really reveals his middle management, like you said. I think even the sheriff being like, dude, I don't care who you are, that's a real blow to him. It's one thing for Beulah to disrespect him. It's another for the sheriff, who I'm sure he thinks himself very superior to and having power over, saying, I don't care who you are. Now, we also have to remember with the sheriff, remember his conversation with Carter. Remember, he says, Oriana and Harrison are on the upstairs. You're in the basement. I'm in an elevator on the way up. I think part of the sheriff's response here is this, I'm in an elevator on the way up. I think he sees himself very much more powerful in the grand scheme of things. Maybe he's got a deal that we don't know about. Maybe he feels like he has finally grown into this sheriff position where he allows the Jacksons, and so he thinks something is owed from the Jacksons that's giving him some power.
But I wonder, where could he go? What is the upper mobility of a small town sheriff? You're already the sheriff. Like, where are you going? What do you think are his aspirations?
In-house head of security, maybe supplanting Miguel.
You think that would be above being in charge of the whole town?
Probably pays better, right?
I don't know. Is it more powerful, though, than being over an entire town?
I think so. Because then you get to be
okay, well, that's one possibility. Is there
right.
any other possibility? I mean, does he want to be a federal agent? Does he want to go into some sort of larger law enforcement role that we're missing, like some sort of aspiration?
Maybe a stepping stone to a larger politician role. God knows we've seen that plenty of times in the Yellowstone universe. Start at one position with a stepping stone.
Right.
Or maybe it's just solidifying his power over this town where because he is a relatively new sheriff. Remember the conversation between him and Beulah at the funeral, and she tells him, you need to learn faster. Maybe this is him learning faster. Maybe this is him solidifying his position so that Beulah's threats of maybe you're not as comfortable as you think you are as a sheriff that we bought and paid for. Maybe this is him finally feeling settled into that.
In the next episode, I would like to see some sort of aspiration for him of like, are we talking about like wanting to become the governor of the state? Are we talking about he wants to get involved in some sort of operations over the border? Are we talking about he wants to get into some sort of federal line of work? Are we talking about what you were saying? Somehow he wants to get more involved with the Jacksons, although with Rob Will at the helm and everything else, I don't understand why he would want to entangle himself more with them or how that would be more prestigious than staying away from them. But like, I need some explanation as to like what I agree. I like the line that you're pointing out, like that he's on the elevator on the way up. Way up to where? And what is it you're wanting to do? And who is it that can help you? Is it Mariano? Or is it somebody we haven't met yet? Like, what is this?
If he is truly a white hat who is conflicted, which is how he's kind of been portrayed this season, right? A guy he's struggling under the weight and oppression of the Jacksons, but there is aspects of, like, he did take Whitney's statement, right? He did let Carter go without making his life more difficult than he could have, right? He has shown, remember, in the truck and after Dwight being killed. So there are aspects of gray to him. So maybe it's not on the Jackson side. Maybe it is making a move to the federal side, because you imagine a sheriff near the border probably is going to have dealings with DEA stuff and Border Patrol things and all sorts of federal agencies who are going to be coming through and asking questions. Now you introduce this illegal smuggling operation that Austin blows the lid off, whistle blows at the end of this episode. Maybe there is something going on that we don't know about yet, right? I feel like Breaking Bad taught us that the federal agencies are always more investigating things that may be obvious.
Or even, see, where I thought you were going to go with the Breaking Bad thing is that there's always a level above you.
Well, that's
And we
true.
haven't met, like, who's the level above these people? Like, we haven't met the Mariano of the group, you know? We haven't met the, like, who's above the sheriff that he would want to go into their shoes or whatever. Like, what's the next level up above all of these people?
Hopefully we get a little more clarity in the finale. Let's talk about Mariano, because the last thing we see is Joaquin gets out of his truck in front of by that cemetery. He screams "fuck" into the night. He screams, you know, "su puta madre," and then he gets in his truck. He takes a couple of deep breaths, and then he calls his father and says, "Papa, I need your help." And that's it. What is he calling Mariano in to do? Is it to deal with Rob Will? Is it to complain about him being pushed out of Tempetal? Is it the sheriff? Like he shot his shot with the gun and it didn't work and it fell on very deaf ears? Why is he calling Mariano in here? Because he struggles with it. Even after being resigned, getting back in the truck, he really stares at that phone. And it's interesting. Remember, he showed Beth the 3 phones that were all for business? The one for his father is the old school flip phone with one number. He didn't dial a number. He pressed one number and press go. So I make it bet that phone only has one number saved in it. Probably his dad. Why? What is he calling? Speculate. What is he calling Mariano in here to do?
This could be several things. This could be, I need to get out of this area. I need to get across the border and I need to be safe elsewhere because my life is being threatened constantly. And now I don't even really feel I have the protection of Beulah anymore because I've basically been pushed out. And Rob Will's been given even more power. So in theory, he could act at any time. So it could be like a physical, like I need help and I need out of here. It could be, you know, string pulling, like you are, you know, the other end of this operation that we've been running illegally. I need you to flex that muscle and say, you know, if you want this to continue to go on, Beulah, you want the Jackson Ranch to continue to get shipments, then I insist that Joaquin has a role on that end of it and that he's protected and that if something happens to him, again, like you guys are all cut off from whatever this entire operation is. That could be a thing, you know, just simply pulling strings. Maybe even on like I need like a posse around me here. Like I've lost what I thought I had. So I need you to send guys here and I need to be able to like be running my own show, whatever that looks like. Maybe I need more guys. So manpower, I don't know. Those are just some I've got. What do you think?
I don't have anything more than what you've got. And I think those are all good possibilities. I like the idea of manpower to protect me or you in person to protect me, because it seems like in order to, the only thing that's going to keep Rob Will and his shovel off of Joaquin's back is someone with a bigger shovel, right? And that may only be Mariano as far as we know.
And I think maybe one of the only people that Beulah would listen to and actually take seriously, because there's very few... There's almost nobody else at this point to pull anybody into this. You know, like if Beulah's going to go off and take a final ride with Everett, let's assume she's moving off to the side a little and that we're moving RW here straight to the middle. Then who else, who are our checks and balances? Like we have to pull Mariano or someone, a version of a Mariano. We don't know. Maybe it's not him. Maybe he stays the voice on the phone, but we are introduced to a different character that comes across the border and is a part of something here that does sway Beulah and Rob Will.
Now, the question is, I feel like we're definitely going to meet Mariano in episode 9, in the finale episode. Now, my hope is we meet him at the beginning of the episode, and that is not the last scene we see of episode 9 finale, because that will be a maddening cliffhanger if the last thing is like him stepping out of the shadows and be like, Iho, I'm here. You know, like, no, don't make us wait. No.
Well, but at least that would be a good cliffhanger.
It would be a very good cliffhanger.
That, right?
I love a cliffhanger,
That
but they
would
also
be
drive me
fun.
crazy. So I think the last thing we need to really discuss is the ongoing saga of Austin, who after episode and episode finally kind of maybe proves our original theory right, that Rip and Beth would collect people from Tempetal. We had named Austin as a possible asset. Before he spills the beans to them, though, were you surprised at Miguel's restraint to not shoot Austin's head off? As soon as Zachariah picked him, Miguel, and Austin to be the ones to go deal with the hogs, I thought to myself, I was like, oh, Zachariah, you have no idea the trouble you have just uncorked for yourself. And he sensed it too, right? He's fixing the drinking basin and he looks up and he decides to go check on them and he finds them with rifles pointed at each other's heads. Miguel had a perfect chance. He could have been like a hog was going for him or something like that, and I had to shoot him, or it was friendly fire or something. Why? But he just makes a joke. He kind of laughs at him. He says, one, don't ask questions you already know the fucking answers to. And then when he storms off, he kind of laughs at Zachariah and says, that one has a bad temper. I like Miguel actually a lot. Miguel is like one of those weird characters that I have found myself very fond of. And I don't know why. He's clearly a killer, but I like him for some reason. And I found that line very funny.
You know why? Because he's a very competent character. He is somebody that when he's the one that steps out of the shadows and shoots Chet. You know, he's very competent. He's the one that keeps Oriana in line and says enough's enough, get in. You know, he's a good character. He's a guy you'd want to actually be your friend. You'd want him on your team.
You certainly don't want him as an enemy.
Side.
That's for sure.
No, for sure. And so I think that's why we all got that vibe. Definitely, oh my gosh, as soon as they panned the camera towards Miguel and it wasn't showing Austin, I was like, oh Lord. I was like, he's definitely going to pull a gun on Miguel. This whole situation is about to go. So it was very well choreographed there for that to happen. I actually thought more was going to happen again, because this is where I'm saying that this episode was surprisingly watered down in terms of the intensity, because that could have been a moment that got even more intense, but instead it sort of fizzled out and nothing too bad actually happened. It did push Austin's hand, I think, to realize I have to get this information out because I'm one step away from being shot, when I'm not looking. So I think it did, motivation wise, I did push him, but I thought it could have even been more intense in that moment because I didn't really think anyone was going to die right then.
Well, a couple things. Coming off of last week, you and I talked about what could Austin possibly think is going to happen to him. You're saying all these things about Tempetal being crooked and dirty in front of Miguel in that bar scene, and then you're going to go be alone with him. Now, it's interesting. It turned out to be Austin who pulls the gun first in the classic Han Solo Greedo who shot first. Austin actually pulls the gun on Miguel. Miguel senses it and turns and pulls his rifle at the same time. But it's interesting. Miguel wasn't being the aggressor at that moment, which makes me think, even though he had a perfect chance to, he wasn't going to act and end him, which does show restraint. It makes me think that there is some checks and balances in this family. It's not just bump a Coke and shoot a guy in the head, Rob Will style, right? There are people who have self-control and will act when they need to, but don't act flying off the handle. Miguel here actually struck me as very Rip-like, and how he has behaved struck me as very Rip-like. I will do violence and I will do it without hesitation, but only if I'm forced to, and otherwise I'm just going to be a quiet observing force. I thought that was interesting. I also found it interesting that both of them were deterred by Zachariah. Zachariah is not really a 10-pedal guy. It's interesting that they both listen to him when he really doesn't have any actual power over them in any way.
I don't know if it was power or just a witness and a realization that they weren't going to be able to kill him and not get Rip involved. Because he's Rip's guy.
Right.
So it's the fact that he came up on them at all and also was not acting like I'm going to start telling everybody, was acting like, let's just simmer down. And so I think both guys kind of realized we can gracefully get out of this situation without either of us getting killed and without us having a witness that we have to deal with and everything. Let's just put both of our guns down and also not pull Rip into this situation because he would be the trigger. Zachariah would be the trigger for Rip to go full on.
Right.
If something happened to Zachariah, that would be a completely different story than if Miguel or Austin were killed. So, yeah, I think that there was a whole bunch of stuff going on right then. And I think Zachariah handled it very well.
Yes.
I think him coming around the corner and...
with his gun drawn.
realizing what the situation was and how, he needed to tamp down everybody's tempers in that moment. He is a guy who had been in prison, so let's assume he's walked into plenty of fights and situations and maybe even has a little bit of, like conflict resolution,
right.
Experience where he has to deal with people. He's also an older guy. I always give credit to when they show sort of the maturity and the perspective of some of the oldest characters on the show. I think that's important because it helps sort of balance the immaturity of our Carter moments. And we don't talk enough about the maturity of like Beulah handling her sons in the way she did, or Zachariah walking into a gun situation with guns drawn and him like talking them all down. Like, we're not talking enough about the maturity that is shown in the show versus how much immaturity with Oriana and Carter is always shown. So I appreciated that, that to me made sense.
I tell you, Azul and Zachariah, I think, are two of my very favorite characters, hands down. I think just scene after scene, I just like the words coming out of their mouth. I like how they handle their business. I like their perspectives. I mean, I think some of my favorite quotes from this season have been from Zachariah, like about finding peace and missing the quiet nights and stuff like that. In the maturity of diffusing the situation, the fact that he knew he also had to fire the rifle in the air almost to break the spell because his words didn't work initially. So he fires the rifle one time in the air, and that's actually kind of what breaks the spell and the guys lower their guns.
I also think, though, there's an extra element there of other guys in the pastures would be aware that something's up over here, like their whereabouts, their everything. It's like think of it as like a flare gun too. Like, we're over here, and also remember we're over here.
Right. I mean, they did have the perfect cover of the fire, though, because they were going to be killing the feral hogs. But I agree with you. The
100%.
way the straight up and down was very flare-like, the way he shot the rifle in the air.
And that it was like a one-shot thing.
Right. Not like killing, right.
I feel like it's more akin to a signal than it is to, like, we just shot a bunch of hogs.
I think it's interesting. Austin comes and tracks down Zachariah in the split heart. I don't think we have any answer for this, but Zachariah is reading like a journal, which I found interesting. He was reading at the bar. It wasn't a book, though. It was like a black leather like journal. So I'm curious if we're going to find out more information. Is that Teresa's journal? Is that something that maybe he was keeping in prison? If you can keep a journal. I don't know if you're allowed to journal in prison. I'm curious.
Might have been a Bible, too.
Might have been a Bible. There was no script on the cover that I could see. So I was looking, because that was my first thought, that maybe he was reading the Bible, which is funny, reading it in the bar. But I laughed to myself when Austin says, "Can I trust you? Can I trust Rip?" And Zachariah's response is, "With your life." Literally, maybe quite literally, you may have to trust them with your life, I wonder if Zachariah chose that with the knowledge of the meaning maybe in his head of what it would mean. Let's play this final clip. This is the final clip of the episode. This is Austin whistleblowing on what is going on at the 10 Pedal.
Something's always felt off. Like the way they still brought in big cattle loads after the border got shut down because of screwworm.
You know this for sure.
Wes wanted to get to the bottom of it. Buddied up to rob Will, then ended up dead.
The bottom of what?
10 Pedal's got an operation down in Mexico that steals and smuggles cattle in illegally. Forges all the paperwork for border patrol and cattle brokers. Place is so mismanaged. It's the only way they've kept the lights on. Kept living in luxury. I mean, hell, it's the only way they've been able to afford a goddamn thing. The whole Jackson family's crooked, top to bottom. They ain't ranchers. Those motherfuckers are thieves. Putting every ranch in South Texas at risk.
That would explain Bullet. Foot and mouth.
When's the next load?
2 days.
We kind of confirmed some stuff there that we had guessed at, but other stuff was new. The fact that it's actually 10 Pedal on the other side of the border also. Not just that they're smuggling cattle in. Again, no mention of drugs, so still a question mark on if that's part of it. But the fact that they're stealing cattle, which is so interesting given how much and how often Beulah talks about the foundation of the family ranch was built on rustling. and Liam O'Connor stealing the Sullivan's cattle to start his own ranch that would become 10 Pedal and change the Jackson to the Nat Jackson name. The fact that they're actually still doing it is actually very bold of her to talk about it so frequently as part of like their coat of arms.
That is interesting. For me, I thought I wanted Zachariah to stop after he said that would explain Bullet. And then don't say the next line of like the hoof and mouth, because I know that they did tell Beulah in like secrecy between Beth and Beulah, but like I don't think that's just common knowledge. Remember, we were kind of being a little bit more quiet, that we didn't want that to get out in the town. So it was kind of like too much. Don't stop talking. But overall, I mean, I'm excited for this. This is the storyline we've been waiting for, that we've been excited about, that we wanted to know what's going on across the border and what are they shipping, and is it just playing cows, and is there something more here, and what else could it be? So gosh, yay for this finally happening.
And an interesting angle that Austin takes at the very end of his monologue is they ain't ranchers, they're thieves. And this is the part that's interesting, putting every ranch in South Texas at risk. That's an interesting line because that makes it a much larger scope of an issue. This isn't just about Dutton Ranch. This isn't just about 10 Pedal. Like, by saying that, they've upped the stakes and what's at stake here by 10 Pedal continuing unimpeded, right? That it's not, the stakes are much larger than just Beth and Rip and Bullet and their dead herd. Right? Every ranch in South Texas, that's the Winter Garden. That's where 10 Pedal originally formed in, and all of that. Like, that's significant. That makes the stakes feel very real and very important, and something that actually has to be tracked down. Not just petty family vendetta, not just one or two dead guys, or, even a dead herd, 175 head. What's 175 head as compared to every ranch in South Texas? Like, that's significant. Right. That gives a lot of gravity to the situation. So interesting to add that in there.
Well, and maybe it gives us a little bit better idea of like what Sheriff Handy could be talking about in terms of like, how are they impacting other areas, and how big then could like Sheriff Handy's job get? Like, maybe he's already working with someone else. He is the new guy on the job, right? Maybe he is already working with the feds or
maybe
working
he was
with
a
U.S.
plant.
Marshals. And that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe there's already more going on here. I think that's all very interesting and compelling. I hope that whoever the new writers are for second season and who's working on these storylines, like, grab onto some of those and blow them up, like, make them bigger, make them more exciting. Because I think there's potential. I do. In my fan fiction brain, I have here in my notes in all capitals bold, maybe it's an issue for the U.S. Marshals to deal with. Wink, wink, Casey. At a very minimum, I could see a phone call from Beth or Rip to Casey being like, what do you think we should do with this situation? I think even to hear Luke Grimes on the phone would be real catnip for the fans. So I think so too. Well, this is another episode of Dutton Ranch. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you guys have some predictions of your own. Please write in and let us know if you do, because we want to hear what you think these characters should be doing next, who you're loving, who you're hating, and give us some ideas about what you want to see for season 2. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Thank you for listening to the Yellowstone Podcast, Dutton Ranch. If you wouldn't mind heading over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and rate, review, and subscribe. And while you're there, please leave us a 5-star review. We would very much appreciate it. And if you write something nice about us, we're going to read it on air. And even if you don't, it still helps in promotion of the show. So 5 stars, people.
Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.